Dennis and Brenda had taken the day off. They wanted to spend it doing something that they loved to do, and that was spending time on the water. When it wasn't boating, it was jet skiing. On May 5, 2008, it was jet skiing. So they headed to the local boat dock, Dale Supret. They got in the water and headed upriver at a fast pace, jet skiing just under the bridge of Interstate 85. They headed upriver, and on their left, Dennis noticed a car had come down the hill of the embankment of the river. He thought, well, maybe some teenagers have been messing around and ditched a car down there or something. But he got curious. It was a newer model car, so he decided to head back and check it out. He approached the car slowly, Brenda behind him. They got closer and closer to the car, and then Dennis stood up on his jet ski and looked. There was something lying next to the car, some form or shape, so he got closer. All of a sudden, shocked, the hair stood up on the back of his head. He turned around to Brenda and he said, "Brenda, go call 911. There's a body lying here." Now, Dennis was known to be somewhat of a prankster, so Brenda hollered back for him to stop kidding around. But as she inched closer and stood up on her jet ski, she realized he wasn't kidding. Terrified, she took off down the river back towards Dale Supret to call for help, to call for 911. Dennis looked upriver and took off in the opposite direction. He saw construction workers working on the banks of the river up ahead. He pulled up and started to describe what he had seen, told them to call 911. Well, eventually, rescue workers made their way to Ira's body. It was 3 days before her 20th birthday. She was found lying, deceased, next to her vehicle. And that was a mystery, because just an hour earlier, she had been seen on campus running around, taking care of errands, just doing normal things. So how'd she wind up all the way across town? Apparently strangled, lying next to her car, her vehicle, dead. Some have put forth the theory that maybe she did this to herself, that maybe she committed suicide. But those close to the crime scene that day will say, nobody could have done that to themselves. For detectives in charge, it was a real whodunit. But they kept coming back to the fishermen. Their stories, their timelines of what they were doing that day. Initially, they didn't jive with each other. One of them said that they came there together. The other one said they drove separately. One of them said they left together. The other one said the other one left earlier. Then later on, their stories, days later, all of a sudden, just in an uncanny way, were exactly the same. So detectives kept coming back to these men, and then of course later on their DNA was found on Ira's vehicle. Well, at that point it was just a matter of time, and 5 months later the two men, cousins, Mark Carver and Neil Cassida, were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors decided to try both cousins, Mark Carver and Neil Cassidy's, separately. Neil Cassidy's trial was first to start, but the day before his trial, he was sitting in the kitchen. He was experiencing breathing problems and he fell over and died. The prosecution was taken aback, and so was the defense, but Mark Carver was scheduled to stand trial next, and he did. With the DNA evidence pointing to him having touched the vehicle, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. He had always maintained his innocence, and he went through the appeals process normally, but that went nowhere for him. Finally, his pleas for innocence reached the North Carolina Center for Actual Innocence, and they decided to take his case. The Innocence Center maintained that the DNA in the case was not properly challenged, and that it received ineffective counsel during his initial trial. Eventually, a district court agreed and awarded Mark Carver a new trial. Currently, the DA is appealing that decision. At the time of this recording, if he's successful, Mark Carver heads back to prison, but if he's not, then he has the option of retrying Mark Carver all over again for first-degree murder, or he could, if he wanted, drop the charges altogether, if he believed Mark Carver was actually innocent. At this time, Mark Carver is out of jail, but must wear an ankle bracelet. We talk about the effect of this tragedy. It's like throwing a rock on a lake that's still like glass. There's a ripple that spreads across here, the community. We'll review the facts in this case and discover some stunning new revelations. We may even find ourselves on the fresh tracks of a killer. When this happened in 2008, the college community at UNC Charlotte was devastated. There was a memorial on campus just days after Ira's body was found. The community of Mount Holly, where Ira's body was found, was stunned and shocked. This was not the kind of thing that happened in that small little community. The police, the detectives involved, were under an immense amount of pressure. State investigators, the FBI was brought in. The district attorney's office was under a great deal of pressure, not just to solve the case, but to allay the community's fears. The community's fears that there was a killer out there among them. Consider also the Yarmolenko family, who's having to grieve and move on from this horrific tragedy amongst these legal wranglings that is ongoing still. And of course, we feel for her friends she knew from high school and college, who are likewise interested in knowing the truth and seeking true justice for Ira, which to this point has been somewhat elusive. Join us now as Fedora looks at the Ira Yarmolenko story. follow a team of investigators and discover stunning new facts as we talk to crime scene experts and get their shocking analysis of the crime scene and their observations, which have never before been revealed, which may lead to more clues and, of course, questions, the answers to which may have already been answered, while the answers to others may remain a mystery. When we think about all of the professionals involved in this horrific tragedy, all of the lives that it has touched, the legal community, the law enforcement community, the Mount Holly Police Department, county, state officials, federal FBI officials, the North Carolina Center for Actual Innocence. All of these organizations are involved in this case and have been and are under a great deal of pressure to present their side of this case. Consider all the media attention that this case has received, which has really helped propel it to a story of national attention. As we review the facts of this case and seek to uncover what will surely be stunning new revelations, we ask you, the listener, to think about all of the lives within the organizations previously mentioned, and to treat each individual and group with a measure of respect. For though they all may be on competing sides, in some sense on a legal basis, engaged in a legal battle, they are all individuals whose lives have been touched by this tragedy, and it's safe to say they all seek one thing that has been quite elusive, and that's justice. Ira was found with the drawstring of her hoodie wrapped around her neck, along with a bungee cord that was thought to have been in the trunk of her car, and the handle of one of her own small handbags. Asphyxiated. She was a poet. It's ironic and sad that one of her most beautiful poems now takes on a bittersweet and ominous overtone. Flower stood up and bowed to the heavens. God, love thy petals, make us breathe. That's Ira's poetry. That's her body lying there, next to her vehicle.
Car was right on the bank right here, and we turned around and came back.
The murderer of Ira Yarmolenko is still out there. This was a crime scene of somebody who planned ahead.
Renowned forensic expert Dr. Maurice Godwin points out that the ligatures were items that were present and close to Ira and not brought to the crime scene. And there seemed to be some staging involved.
These were items that were not brought to the scene.
Or that were not brought to the scene, right. The personality traits of somebody that's highly organized.
Somewhat organized.
Chris Muma of the North Carolina Center for Actual Innocence weighs in on who she thinks the killer might be.
I think the person who did this to Ira knew her because it was a very personal murder.
I believe that she was accosted and she was killed, and
A body lying there. The Ira Yarmolenko story, a Team Fedora production, where you, the listener, can follow the twists and turns of an investigation into her story. We begin by turning back the hands of time. In the next episode of this series, A Body Lying There, we take you, the listener, on a digital time capsule, if you will. And there will be clues along the way. Decipher fact from fiction, as legitimate misinformation is often put out in the press to protect facets of the investigation. And no matter what digital platform you may find yourself on, listening to this podcast, Fedora would sincerely appreciate your digital blessing. A special thanks to all the media organizations in Charlotte and nationally for covering this story and helping to make it a story of national attention that it deserves. We complete episode 1, the narrative intro of A Body Lying There, with a requiem, a daughter's poem to her mother, who sat and watched my infant head, sleeping in my cradle bed, and tears of sweet affection shed, who taught my infant lips to pray, and love God's holy book and way, and walk in wisdom's pleasant way, who ran to help me when I fell, and with some pretty story tell, or kiss the place and make it well, when pain and sickness made me cry, who gazed upon my heavy eye, and wept for fear that I might die.
I only hope that police can find this person responsible for that. Can find this person responsible for that.